Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jody Lynn Creighton.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
So Jody Lynn, we already got the heads up from our guest today, right? We're going to be doing some mindset talk. I think we're ready for that. We usually are. I have to tell you that, as you know, and as listeners know, with all the stuff that I've been going through with the cats, my mindset has been challenged lately. So I'm feeling like I'm a short-term expert on the topic. I'm just saying, just throwing that out there. But you know how it is when you go through trauma, when you go through difficult stuff, you get stronger, you get better. You know, it kind of pisses you off along the way because you don't want to have to go through all that in order to get better. But that is one of the positive sides to going through this kind of stuff. And the same thing happened with our guest. Doug Fleener actually went through his own stuff. He's going to tell us about that in a moment. And it made him stronger. We're going to learn about how that worked out to the point where today he likes to help people in a variety of different ways. And we'll go into that as well. But, well, I'm not going to pre-sell it. I'm just going to let him tell the story. So, Doug, welcome to the program. How you doing today?
Good, Walt. Thank you for having me. And Jody Lynn, thank you for having me as well.
So give us the pre-story, the story that leads up to the story. You know, how did you end up going through your dark night of the soul that took you out to the better place?
Well, I like to always joke that probably my greatest accomplishment was being wittiest of my senior class. Okay. And I also probably could have been nominated as least likely to succeed.
Okay.
And so definitely was least likely to write a book. That's for sure. And yeah, I barely got through school and then went to college and barely got into college. And I discovered that I was working full time, going to school full time and partying full time. So something had to give. Yeah. So of course, I needed the job to keep the partying going. So I dropped out of college and then I went to work for my father down in Florida. And I like to say it was kind of my living my Jimmy Buffett song. He was worked in a marina. And if you know the song Steve Martin never called. But anyway,
I was so Margaritaville, but that's okay. I'm okay with that one.
You're good with it. So anyway, this was in the 80s in the Miami Vice go fast boat smuggling days, and I ended up owning my own marine supply store, and so many of the smugglers were my customers as well as others, and so it was there that I started kind of I would order product in to sell to the boaters, and then I would use that same money to then buy cocaine from the dealers, the drug runners. And that kind of snowballed, if you will.
Literally.
And, yeah. Oh, that is a really good one. Yes. Dang it. I wish I'd thought of that. It's always a good one when you're like, oh, I'll use it next time and claim it as my own. So, yeah. So I had a drug addiction that was out of control. I was drinking very heavily. I was stealing money. I was a liar. I was a thief. And my father couldn't figure out why we always had these customers in our store and we were busy, but we were always out of money. So
that could be an issue.
Yeah. He's like, I can't figure this out. And so in 1987, start of 1987, it was Super Bowl Sunday. We had this wild Super Bowl party. Giants were playing the Broncos, if I remember right. And so I'm going to do what, right? I'm in my late 20s, what any person does when life gets hard. I'm going to run away. And so I tied on one Super Bowl Sunday. The next day I wake up, and when you're kind of, if you remember, you're kind of hung over and, it was a hell of a night and you start to open your eyes. Where am I? What have I done? And all of a sudden, as I was opening my eyes, I heard, and we'll be landing in Houston International. I'd actually woke up in the center seat of an airplane.
Oh my goodness.
with no idea how I got there.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm looking around, all these people are like in winter coats, and I'm like in a t-shirt and pair of shorts, flip-flops. I put my hand in my pocket and big old wad of cash. I had stolen the last of the money.
Uh-huh.
And so I was trying to run away to Hawaii, because if you're in Florida, you know, and you're going to run away, you got to go to somewhere even warmer.
It's a rule.
Yes, don't know if I'll write a book on how to run away as an adult, but you know, probably be a pretty good seller, right?
I would think you get a pretty good readers for that one, I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And we run away in so many different ways, right? So just so happens, coincidence, because I was just making a connection to you. My brother lived there. So I called him up, and you know, and he answered the phone. I said, "Hey," and he goes, "Ooh, man, Dad is mad with you." Well, he had figured out while I was gone, and I didn't show up that day, what was going on.
Probably wasn't too hard to figure out when all the money was gone.
Yeah, when he finally, you know, got the looked at the books and realized that a lot of money went out and no money came in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was fielding calls from vendors who wanted paid and never told him.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to fly back and face him. And it was at that point that I realized, my life's probably not going in the way it should be going.
You
might
have a
need
gift
to make
of
a change here.
understatement.
What's that?
You have a gift of understatement.
Yes. Oh, you'd imagine that was the hardest flight and conversation ever.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, I just have to interrupt you. I have to tell you something. One of my other co-hosts, Joel Elston, he was actually my 12th interview back when I started the show in 2012, and we're still doing shows today, has a very similar story to you. He's also from Florida. He also stole from his father's business. He was a gambling addict. He went to Nevada and gambled it all away and then was homeless. But the parallels here are really quite fascinating. So go ahead. I just want to let you know that this is not unknown to me.
That's amazing. I was going to get a little upset if he also woke up in the center seat of an airplane, because it is a little bit of
no. He just ate his breakfast out of the dumpster in the back of a McDonald's. So yeah.
I've been very close to that. That's for sure. So I had to fly back to see my father, and my father, he said, "Well, you know," he was obviously angry. Going to have to do something. So a friend of his child was going to this therapist, and he goes, "Go see this therapist, see what he says." So I go see this therapist, and he goes, "So I have this theory about alcoholics and drug addicts, that they're actually warriors from the past, and the problem that they drink and drug is because there's no more battles to fight. So what I could do is hypnotize you and talk to that warrior." And I'm like, "Oh, hell no."
Okay.
No. And he goes,
People
"Well, if you're
wonder why I sometimes question, the credentials that people have in their careers. There's a perfect example of it, but we'll just leave that one lying there."
Oh, yeah. I'll never forget. I want to talk to that warrior. I don't want to know what happens when I'm hypnotized.
Okay. Yeah.
But you're so right. Like, how did he? I don't think he was really a therapist. I think my father's friend was being taken a little advantage of.
It's also kind of a funny thing for me, because I mean, I've always been one who wanted to do alternative stuff. But Joel actually got into being a therapist and then later a life coach, and he got fired from jobs because he was doing alternatives. He would teach law of attraction along with helping them with the traditional therapeutic stuff, and the employers didn't like that. So I mean, I lean on the side of the alternative, but I also like the alternative to make sense. I'm just kind of funny that way.
Yeah.
What
right, Jody Lynn? I mean, you and I both tried stuff, right? We tried a lot.
Absolutely.
And
I've tried
really cool.
way crazier things.
Yeah. There's always like a thread to ours that actually makes sense. It actually works.
Yeah.
I was about to say, who says he's not, wasn't right? I mean,
I don't know.
I can
But
just
for
tell
that to be
you,
the first thing out of his mouth.
it
That's
was one
what-
of the first.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny because, and the way I tell it's kind of true because he was kind of leaning in. So I have this theory that
Like a conspiracy
warriors
theory.
from a
Yeah.
previous life, and I can talk
Mhm.
to that warrior. So it's like,
Okay.
I'm good. But what he did say is, well, you might go into recovery. You might look into, why you're drinking and drugging so much. And
Good advice. I like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
and that was 39 years ago,
Okay.
Wow.
and I've been clean and sober since.
Good stuff.
And thank you. And so that guy who could have been voted least likely to succeed and bankrupted a family business was able to slowly start changing my life.
I am curious to know what happened to
those
the
days.
family business, though.
We had to actually sell it, and there was no money left. And I will tell you the best part of that story is that really hurt my father. I mean, he was my partner, and he put the money
Mhm.
up, and he was probably in his 60s at the time, 50,
Mhm.
And it changed his lifestyle.
Mm.
And that man never resented me for it.
Wow.
Wow.
Talk about the power of forgiveness.
Yeah. Right.
And he became probably one of my biggest fans as I started to succeed in business. And he also didn't mind those monthly checks I sent for a long time to pay him back.
There is that side to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, I had to pay him back as much as I could. So
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But did you find that his forgiveness came before the checks?
oh yeah,
Oh.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
a pretty profound thing that he had no guarantee that you were going to give him anything or that he'd ever see that money again and still chose to be your biggest fan.
Yeah. Thank you. He part of him, he sort of blamed himself a little bit for it, that he should have known. And I love that saying, screw me once, shame on you, screw me twice, shame on me. He'd probably never loaned me money again, yeah.
I would think.
Or
Yeah.
went into business with me.
Yeah.
But he was very forgiving. So
That's amazing.
yeah.
That's very cool.
It's-
What
yeah,
do you
thank
think
you.
were your biggest takeaways from the whole experience, though?
Something happened. So when I went into recovery, I started going to some 12-step meetings. And one quick story was I walked into this one room and it was bright and all these people were laughing. And I was amazed that anyone was having fun without drinking and drugging. And so I'm just standing there kind of overwhelmed. And two old guys walk up to me and they're on either side of me. And it's two old fishermen who come to my store all the time.
Oh.
And one of them looks at the other and then looks at me and goes, well, we've been waiting on you.
Wow.
So clearly I did not have my crap together as well as I had thought, who just customers had kind of know how
Mhm.
disastrous my life had been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, the takeaway, and we'll talk a little bit, about the book, but one of the key things is I went back in my life and said, okay, at all these times in my life when something big happened, like when I finally realized I could no longer drink and drug, or the small things that happened, one of the things I saw was that there was some interruption to the moment, something that would interrupted my thinking, whether it was, my reactions or just how I, my routines, my habits. And because in part of that story is about like 10 days afterwards, so I'd blown up my life. I was broke. I was going to have to get a job. I had to sell this business. And I thought I should just try to be able to fix everything in a couple of weeks, because I'm just overwhelmed with how many people I'd hurt and everything. But this guy said something to me that really was profound. I mean, simple, but profound. And sometimes, right, those are the
They
most
usually
profound.
are. Yeah, profound is usually the simplest.
Right. Yeah. He goes, well, look, he says, yeah, you all these things you think you gotta do. What if today you just went a day without a drink or a drug?
Mm.
And I was like, no, man, I got to get a job. I got to do this. I got to do that. And he says, well, what if today that's all you did? And so I could kind of trace it back to that was kind of a real monumental moment when I realized, I just, the gig was up. I had to change.
It sounds similar to my friend Joel, the one I was telling you about, who for him, one of the key moments came when he was on like the worst possible losing streak. He was a gambling addict, and he was on a losing streak where literally nothing came in for like days at a time, weeks at a time. Everything was a loss, everything. And one of the reasons he kept going as an addict was because, well, my life's got to change at some point, so I'll just keep going until my life's going to change, right? Yeah. And I guess he went to the dog track this one particular day and finally picked a race where the dog won. And he was so excited until he looked at his ticket and found he'd gotten the wrong dog on the ticket.
Oh, no.
So even when he won, he still lost.
That is a sign right there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Divine intervention.
That was a signal like, okay, pay attention here. It's what I call the 2x4 rule. Jody Lynn has heard this one a few times. The 2x4 rule, different people express it different ways, but for me, it's where the universe starts off by whispering in your ear and you ignore it. And then it taps you on your shoulder and you ignore it. And then it shoves your shoulder and you ignore it. And then it gives you a really hard shove and you still ignore it. And then it gets off the 2x4. That's what the 2x4 rule is. So if you keep ignoring the signals, the 2x4 is going to come out at some point.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Somebody once asked me, didn't you see any signposts along the way? And I'm like, oh yeah, I ran them over.
Right.
I accelerated. Of course I saw the signpost. The other one I have is a little analogy of like when you're hitting a bottom, you're falling in this deep hole. And then all of a sudden you hit this ledge and you've been falling, so it hurts like hell. And at that point, you can either stop, but most addicts and alcoholics and other people just roll over and keep going deeper until you hit the ledge, and each ledge you go down hurts a little bit more each time. And until you're tired of hitting ledges or sick and tired of being sick and tired. And, and again, those are big things with alcoholism and addiction and what have you, but it's also, I think, just a metaphor sometimes for the, with our attitudes and just ways that, we just keep kind of going deeper and deeper until we decide that, we just need to change our perspective.
I think it also comes down to who you have in your life. I mean, you mentioned the two fishermen who met you at the 12-step meeting. There's a scene that comes out of the old TV series, the West Wing, that kind of evokes the same idea. One of the characters in there tells a joke about how a guy falls into a hole in the sidewalk, and one of these manhole kind of holes, and a priest comes by and he says, "Father, I'm stuck down here. Can you give me help?" And the father writes down a prayer and tosses it into the hole, and says, she's like, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" So waits some more, and then somebody else comes along and he sees a lawyer. "Oh, hey, can you help me with this?" He says, "Sure, no problem." And he writes out a summons, tosses it into the hole, and walks on. And this keeps happening over and over again. Finally, a friend of his comes by and says, "Joe, can you help me? I'm down this hole." Joe jumps into the hole. Says, "What have you done? Now we're both stuck down here." And Joe says, "Yeah, but I've been down here before and I know the way out."
There you go. Oh, that's a great ending.
Yeah. That's
So
the benefit of who you're connected with. Who do you end up connecting to? I mean, in Joel's case, it was people who he connected with who helped him to understand how he was contributing spiritually and emotionally to his own situation. You mentioned the fisherman. I'm sure there were others too, but let's talk about that piece. Who do you connect to, and how does it help you climb out of that hole?
Yeah, I think and I think your analogy is and that story is just great, because so often when whatever we're going through, right, we think we're the only one who's gone through it.
Yeah.
Right. And I got into it, I got to get out of it or what have you. And I think one of the things that any kind of recovery does, but it's a great model for anything, right, is to find people who've been through what you've been through, come out the other side. And I think just as important is they did the work to come out the other side.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I think one of the things with social media and self-help books and everything, right? Everybody makes it just sound, like, it was really easy and just follow this. And the one that there was a moment in my early recovery made a big difference. So I was only a few months clean and sober, and I met this guy, Fred, and he had 47 years at the time. And he had a disabled son. So he was a guy probably in his late 70s. He had a disabled son who lived with him. His wife had some kind of terminal illness and was like in a hospital bed in the living room.
Wow.
Right. But he had a good attitude. But the thing is, he told me one day, he goes, Doug, everything that's happened in my life happened for the best. I just didn't know it always at the time.
Yeah.
And, and it's funny because I've told that story many times and a lot of people debate it.
Well, sure, because on the surface, how can that be? You've got a disabled son, you got a wife who's dying in her bed. How could this possibly be a good situation?
Correct. But like I say, it's what he chose to take away from it.
Yeah.
And so, so there were times in my life that, I had to go get a job I didn't want, or I did these things and life was really hard. I just kept going back to Fred T. Like, everything in his life happened for the best, and his life was a hell of a lot worse than mine. And that was very...
Again, with my friend Joel, what he found is that, because he was in very much the same situation as you, and the difference for him was he actually ended up going to court, getting convicted. He's a convicted felon, went to jail, that sort of thing. And then everything that happened afterward, literally, there was never a choice. It was always just one option. Mm-hmm. So it was either take the option or just roll over and die. There was no third choice. It just didn't exist. Right. And he said that made it easier. If there's only one choice, you just take the one choice. It doesn't matter how crappy it is, because it's the only choice you have.
And his defense, not everybody makes that. Not everybody makes that right choice.
Mm-hmm.
True. Oh yeah, you can actually dive off the deep end again. But that it's a fascinating thing. If you're presented with that one choice, do you follow it? He did. It worked out great.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, and I think sometimes the most difficult ways we don't actually realize is the easier way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But
we don't know anything about that. No.
Yeah. No, it seems more difficult on the surface, but once you're through it, you're like, oh yeah, that was easier.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and so, yes, versus keep going and, hitting your head up against the wall over and over and over and keep doing the same things and thinking, there's going to be that breakthrough. There's going to be that change or what have you. And instead, sometimes, what looks hard is kind of actually easier.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, but you don't see that right away.
No.
I mean, when you're in the middle of it, that's the last thing you see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and no doubt. And I think one of the issues is most people get stuck because what they see is this perceived hard thing ahead. They don't move and they don't see their way through it. Right. But clarity, people wait for clarity, but action is what creates clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
not staying on the same point is what creates clarity. You have to make some sort of motion. It can be, and action is certainly the easiest kind of motion to make, but there are lots of different kinds of motions you can make. They can be mental, they can be spiritual, they can be emotional. But the point is, are you going to stay where you're at? Which people do. This is one of the more fascinating things. We call them comfort zones, which they really aren't. But people get
really weird word when you think about it, right? Yes. Yeah. You're so uncomfortable in your comfort zone.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But it's because it seems at that time to be less uncomfortable than the alternative.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's not, it doesn't really matter whether it's not true. It just happens to be that's the way we tend to look at it when we're in those comfort zones. But people stay in them. And I don't think when you stay in them, you realize in most cases that you're torturing yourself. But that's what we do.
Yeah.
We torture, right, Jody Lynn? I mean,
totally. Yeah, I think I lean back on that phrase that you were just talking about. It always happens for the better. And I don't really know where I picked that up in my life. I can't quantify a specific person that said it or a place where I learned it or whatever. But I remember being shook when I saw it or saw that phrase or heard that phrase and actually tested it against my life and the crappy things that happened. And as I look back, always something better.
Right.
So I always relied on that phrase exactly of in the hard time when I couldn't see forward, when I didn't have that clarity, when it's easy to get stuck inside of that comfort zone. If you don't have that belief that it's always for the best, like something better is going to come out of this. If I didn't believe that, I could have gotten stuck, hundreds of times in those moments, like, oh, this is better than death, or this is better than, whatever. Right. But I really glommed onto that phrase of it's always happening for the better. And I just may not be able to see it in this moment. That's really, really tough. But I know that one day I'll look back and I'll see it. And I knew that to be true from everything that I had been through up to that point, and seeing it like, oh yeah, it's true. I am better. That was for the better. But I could have never connected the dots. And I think that's so interesting too, with the billions. That's what I've learned, is there's billions of possibilities that are available to us in every moment of what could happen or what could come to be. And I mean, my imagination isn't as great as the source, the creator, whatever you want to call it, God, all of these things. Like, that plan is more masterful and more amazing than I could ever comprehend with my own, imagination today. So I would lean on both of those things. Like, I can't imagine how great it could be. So why am I pigeonholing myself because I can't see?
Do you remember? I mean, it's always, not always, it's often hard to identify something like this because these are transition things that happens over time. But do you recall like a turning point where that realization really came into sharp focus in your mind?
Yeah. When I was like in my early 20s, when I had, I think I had just broken up with like my first long-term boyfriend, who was a like emotionally abusive relationship. And in those moments, like we had a house, we went through the crash of 2008. It was worth half of what we paid for it. And I remember just really feeling stuck. Like, I can't leave. There's nothing I can do. This is the worst situation. Like, I'm in my 20s and I'm going bankrupt. I'm a loser. I'm going to sleep on my brother's couch forever. And then I remember that philosophy. It always worked out for the better. And it was like, bam, okay, this is hard. This is going to suck for a while. And I don't know what this is going to look like, but I know it always works out for the better.
Do you remember why you believe that though? I mean, because that's an extraordinary thing to believe when you're in the midst of something like that.
No, I think I did a lot of I started doing some personal development from then, but from a young age, I was molested when I was a kid. So after that had happened, I'm so grateful that I had a father who was into personal development and who was like going through that, wanting to learn. And he was trying to learn from a leadership side of things, but also he recognized he wanted to be a better dad than his dad was. And he just wanted to be better for his kids. So he was always working on that. So when I was going through that, he made a point of spending time with me to teach me some of these fundamentals. Like, every day we would go and we'd have a fire in our like back 40 and we'd talk about my feelings and how I was doing and, all of these things to help me process all of this. And so I assume that it came from him, that it always works out from the better in some of the things that he learned. But in those times, like when I was in my early 20s and going to university for the first time, I remember taking a psychology course and they started talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I saw the hierarchy of needs and I was like, no, you're wrong. Wayne Shepp made that. He told me about it. Like, my dad's been telling me about the hierarchy of needs since I was like 10 years old. Like, I was just, like, oh, that didn't come from my dad. Not that he ever said he made it up in any way, but I just assumed that this
did come from him.
Well, yeah, this wisdom was coming from him and he was teaching me. I didn't really think about where he had learned it or whatever. So I remember in that moment being like, oh, he learned these things from someone else. So I think it was in that time in my journey of growing up with his influence and him being so close to me because of everything that happened and him taking that time to teach me those things. It had to have come from there. And it was a really awful and catastrophic thing to go through. And I think he really wanted me to see that there was another side to this, that there was, the light at the end of the tunnel, and, wanted me to be okay and forgive the individual and let go not condone what the person did, but let go of that before I didn't have a chance to let go of it. He was worried something was going to happen with the individual. He was a young man. He wasn't even an adult at the time. And so, I was so grateful that somebody implanted that in, that he implanted that in, and that I could see it real time because I relied on that. Every time I look back, it was always better.
So there's another example of being connected with somebody who is the right person to connect with, somebody who can give you that I know the way out routine.
Exactly.
Very powerful story. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I think
so. Let's fast forward a little bit, because I think we got a pretty good lay of the land where your life has been concerned, Doug. But you got past that formative period. that's probably the polite way to put it. But you got past the formative period. You learned stuff from it. How did that actually translate into how you applied it in your life?
Yeah, what I think probably the biggest thing that I started to apply is, and actually I wrote a book 2 years ago kind of based on this, and was that what I could see and what was changing my life in recovery could also help me in my career and in my relationships. And probably one of the biggest things was really about to be able to live in the day, right? And so it and in recovery it's very focused on a day at a time, if you will. But one of the things I started to see was that so often we have these things we see out that we want, and we start to plan for it, and we start to whether we make vision boards and these long-term plans. But ultimately, and not saying those things aren't good for you, but ultimately, right, it's what you do in the day that creates your success and creates your happiness. And then probably the second thing that really helped my career is I went to work for a gentleman who, and kind of back to the people who end up in our lives, he probably did two things that was really important for me. One is he believed in me probably before I believed in me.
Yeah, that's a good mentor right there.
Yes, absolutely. And the second thing is it's okay that if you don't have the knowledge for what you need at the moment, but you need to get the knowledge that you need as you move forward. And and I think so often I thought I was very insecure, so I'd overcompensate it with trying to be funny or these certain things. But what I realized was that I needed, that really the equation was if you take the experience of the past and the knowledge gained today, you can create a better tomorrow based on the actions you do today. And so those things is probably really came together. And honestly, well, I also got some really good breaks. I got lucky sometimes. There's nothing wrong with some luck. Right time, right place. Maybe there's more there than we see.
Basically the same thing.
Right. I mean, I went to work for Bose Corporation, and they had one store at the time. And
wow, that was a while ago then.
Yeah, they actually ended up shutting down all their stores. They had over 100 stores. I took them from one store to 100 stores. But, kind of, going back to what Fred had told me, right? The best thing they ever had to me, right? So I had to close that business up, and I had to go to work. I went to work for the Sharper Image, which you remember those days, I'm sure.
Absolutely,
and, and so fun place to work. But, and so when I went to work for Bose, to get out of working in retail. And then they opened up this retail chain. And it just so happened, everything I had learned in that job that I didn't want to get put me in this place to succeed.
It's astonishing how often that happens. It's truly astonishing.
And I don't think most of us, we don't often connect those dots, right?
No, not really.
Right. But if I hadn't lost that business and gone to work for this company that had high standards and was really about customer experience and customer engagement, it really was like a master's degree, in a certain kind of retail that Bose was doing right at that time.
Right. Yeah. It's funny how you have to kind of look back over time. You have to have that time span, first of all, to look back on. But when you look back over time, you can start to piece together, no matter how your life has gone, you can start to piece together. I picked up this skill. I picked up that skill. I learned this. I learned that. And they all fit together to do this thing that I'm doing now. It's astonishing, but it plays out that way. I'm going to say 95% of the time.
Yeah.
And that may even be an understatement. It may be close to 100%. But it's just amazing to me how often that plays out. And yet it does.
Yeah, and I think when you can start to see that a little bit more proactively, I think, one of the things I talk a lot, right, is about perspectives and options. And we always have far more options than we even think about, right? But to have more options, you have to have kind of a little different perspective. And, and so when you can widen your perspective, you widen your options. And I think you widen the opportunities, and not just career wise or work wise, but also in relationships and in happiness and even the way you just spend your time.
And in your
health. We get so locked into like the one track perspective of this, you do this and then this happens, or it has to look like this, or whatever it is. You could say it about relationships, work, about money, about every single thing that we touch. The more narrow our perspective is, the more locked in we are to that has to be true, when there's so many other perspectives available. And you're right, we do close off those opportunities or those possibilities by being so narrowly focused. Just taking that step back and seeing that, two things can be true at once. There's more things happening here than I can comprehend, or I can see with my own eyes, or understand with my own brain. What else is possible here?
And there's a fascinating piece to what you're talking about too, because you've touched on half of the fascinating piece, the fact that we can close our minds off to it. The other half of the fascinating piece, from my perspective, is that focus ability actually gives us the ability to drill in on whatever that thing is that we're focusing on, to the point where we become expert at it. We become really, really, really good at it. So there's a trade-off. On the one hand, we cut ourselves off. On the other hand, we develop skills on the same thing.
Yeah. And it's probably wild. And I think it's getting harder and harder, right? Because there's just so much information out there. There's so many distractions. There's just so many things that can really pull you to the point where there's so little focus that you miss the opportunities that are in front of you.
Well, I'm wondering if what it really comes down to is how you decide to feel about those opportunities and what was missed and what you pursued. Because the thing that keeps coming up in my life and in my experience is, it isn't so much what happens to me. This is part of what one of my major life lessons was. Because for the longest time, I believed that for any given event, any given circumstance, good, bad, indifferent, there was a default emotional connection. If something bad happened, then you had to feel bad about it. If something good happened, then you had to feel good about it, or at least you tried to. And that the idea that you could choose a different emotional response was ludicrous. I mean, what the heck? Who's going to come up with that piece of nonsense? Well, I finally learned that wasn't true, and that opened up a whole range of new possibilities for me. But until I learned that one, I was kind of locked into the idea that a negative, or not negative, a narrow focus is going to produce just this one thing. That's all it's going to produce. It wasn't until I realized I could actually change how I feel about something and get a different result from the exact same thing I was focusing on.
Right. Yeah, that's something that's a little bit of a skill and power that people don't realize they have. But the good news is that it's a very teachable, learnable skill and mindset.
It really is. Yeah. And even if it's not being taught to you, you can learn it yourself. That's the way I did it. I actually learned it myself. Now, I had a whole lot of help. I mean, that's one of the reasons I started the podcast. I started the podcast because I needed a lot of help, and I didn't have somebody like, Jody Lynn's father, or I didn't have like your father or your two fisherman friends to lean on when I had my problem. I did have a spouse, but she didn't have many of the answers either. So we were kind of figuring it out together. I didn't have anybody to lean on, so I started a podcast. The point is,
how many episodes have you done?
What's that?
3,000 some. How many episodes?
That's about 2,200.
2,200.
Yeah,
that's a lot of that's a lot of information, and a lot of people.
It is. Yeah.
There's a lot of influence, like different perspectives, different energies, and different ways to say the same thing.
And the amazing thing that I love the most is having connected with people like you, Jody Lynn.
Mhm.
Some of my best friends are the people who do the show with me,
Yep.
and they're from all over the planet. I love
Right.
that. I absolutely love that. So I think I mentioned that just to say it doesn't really matter whether you've got somebody in your life right now or not who can be that mentor, who can be that person. You can find them,
Yeah.
especially in this age where we live in now, where we have all this interconnection going on globally.
Mhm.
The only thing that's stopping you from finding somebody who can have that kind of positive influence on you is that you just aren't looking.
Right.
That's
That's
really
it.
it.
Yeah.
It's not like, 60 years ago where you grew up in a town of 2,000 and that was it.
Mhm.
There was no other option.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all in different places and we're having a conversation. Like,
Yeah. In the same living room, it seems.
exactly.
It really is the power of the positive parts of technology. That's for
Mm.
sure.
Yeah, and there are quite a few of them. So let's go on with your story. So you went through what you went through. You were paying stuff back. You gained these insights that you were applying, and your life started getting these amazing, fortunate things happening that all seem to fit together. I imagine at some point you're starting to like piece this together in your mind and say, "Wait a minute, this is important." Do you remember where that
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah. So I was at Bose for a number of years and we did their expansion. And then I left there and started really focusing on consulting and coaching in retail leadership,
Mm.
customer experience. And that was a really, really great opportunity because I was able to travel the world and just meet all these different people. And one of the things I was really struck by was, whether I was in Australia or the UK or Des Moines, wherever, Toronto, you name it, that there was just this, there was these common elements of successful
Mm.
people. And, and I use the word successful and most people just think about money, right? But there's just so many
Oh.
different elements, right?
So many different ways that you can be successful.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. And so they're all obviously very interconnected, or at least
Mhm.
in the things that you do. So I did that for a number of years. And then in 2017, I had a client of mine ask me to run his business. And I didn't want to work for him, but he made a great offer. And so I was getting a little tired of traveling. So I went and did that.
Mhm.
And really worked out well because when the pandemic hit, what I was doing, business went to almost zero. And
Wow.
his business skyrocketed because of the pandemic. So again,
Amazing. Yeah.
right time, right place.
Right.
We were wildly successful because it was a real estate law office title company. So interest rates plummeted, refinancing happened everywhere.
Wow.
So
Yeah. Perfect.
So it was really, it was great. And then when I came out of that, interest rates went back up. He needed to take his business back over. And then that's when I really just started doing a little bit of introspective and just trying to figure, okay, I've had some experiences, how can I put them together and share them? And so 2 years ago, I wrote a book called The Day Makes a Year Makes a Life. And that was really about the tenements of recovery as I applied them to business. And then my most recent book, Start with What If. I started with the premise of saying, well, when all these good things happened, or when anything happened where they were kind of monumental moments in the way that I would change or grow, what was going on? And that's where I really kind of come to see that there was some form of interrupter, and kind of, right. You talk,
Mhm.
right. Julie, you talk about that, right? So that kind of that interruption of just your habits, your reactions, what you would normally do. And so I set out to try to identify, how do I take that, simplify it so I can share it, and then write a book about it.
Mhm.
And so so it really came back to that when that guy said, well, what if you only went a day without a drink and a drug? So I started thinking about that question, what if? And what we realized with what if is that most of the time when we think about what if, we actually look backwards with it. And it's usually with some form of regret.
Yeah.
What if I hadn't gotten married? What if I didn't study that in school? What if I hadn't stolen all that money? All these sort of things.
Yeah.
But what I realized is that when that gentleman asked me that day, what if, what he did is he not only interrupted my current thinking, but he gave me a whole new perspective. And so what I tried to do is, okay, so how do you teach something like that? And so it came down to what I call the what if rule. It's a very simple 3-step process of pause, question, go. Right. So anytime something good, something bad, so there's always this opportunity for a new perspective. But first, you have to break the moment with a pause. And then what I teach is how to ask a what if question to start to change your perspective. Whether, again, good, bad, whatever's going on, and whether it's looking at new opportunities, whether it's the way something in a relationship is happening. And then, so, you could say it's somewhat around mindset, but the piece I think missing for a lot of people's mindset is they don't then take some form of action. And so the key thing for me though is, okay, so I got this, I'll write a book about it. Then I realized, if you're going to share something with the world that's supposed to be simple, it shouldn't take 250 pages to explain it. And there's a lot of books out there, right, that have a simple thing, 250 pages. So what I did is I wrote a chapter on the what if rule and a chapter on what if moments. And then the rest of the book is about how to learn to practice it on a weekly basis so that it becomes a skill that you can use in any moments.
I'm curious about something because the whole phrase "what if," which is a very short phrase, but the phrase evokes something in my mind. There's a teacher that both Jody Lynn and I know of that we like, and I don't know, you may know the teacher too, called Abraham Hicks. Abraham Hicks has come up with what they call a process. It's basically a way of working through your emotional state to get yourself into what they call the high flying space, the feel good space, making yourself be a happier and healthier and more mindful individual. The process is called, instead of what if, it's wouldn't it be nice if. In other words, not just picking something that is a what if, but something that is a what if that you would actually like. Because there's also the possibility of picking a what if you don't really like.
Very much.
I can give you an example of that right away. One of my businesses, I have a gardening service business, and one of my employees left toward the end of last season to go do a sales job. She wanted to, expand her horizon and so forth. Well, she's coming back this year because she found that she really hates just working for the money and wants to actually do something that she loves. The point of bringing that up is she had only asked the first part of the question, what if? She hadn't asked herself, wouldn't it be nice if? She kept thinking, well, I really need this. This is important to, having a good life, but I'm not looking forward to it, but I got to expand my horizons and so forth, instead of, wow, here's what I would really like to do.
Right.
Because it's not a question that people ask a lot anymore. I mean, it's one of the things that strikes me the most when I talk to young people, if I'm out doing a day trip or something and I'm talking to a clerk in the store or something like that, I'll ask them, so, what this is your summer job. Okay. Are you going to school? Oh, you're going to school. What are you going to school for? What's your major? What are you doing? And they tell me the story. And almost 9 times out of 10, just from the way they're telling the story, I can hear from their voice, I'm doing this because that's where I'm going to have the most successful career, where I'm going to make the most money. I'm going to have the American dream and so forth. And so I'll ask them some question that essentially says, yeah, but what's the part of it that you love? And I get these blank looks back.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
And it worries me a little bit because these are people who have never really been challenged on, well, what is it that you love? What's your passion in life? What's important to you?
Well, and it's interesting because there's this shift in our society about mental health and being like awareness and like ascension and understanding and all of this stuff, especially over the last 5 years when it comes to ascension, at least. But I mean, I think that it's been longer. Our society has been, looking at this context, if you will. And from my dad's day, he would tell me about, the ladder on the wrong side of the building or the ladder up against the wrong building. Sometimes you'll chase something and you'll get to the top of the ladder and realize it's not what you thought it was going to be, or it's the wrong building. And And so that philosophy has been in play for a long time. And yet we're still having this issue of driving towards money exclusively, essentially, money, status, power, whatever, and missing that piece of what about the joy? What do you love about it? And I had this exact conversation with my niece. She's, saying, I want to do this and I want to do that and I want to do this and, whatever. Right. And she landed on anesthesiologist. She's only, 15. So she's got some time to change her mind and whatever. Right. But anesthesiologist. And I said, what made you decide on that? And she said, oh, well, I just watched my friend's dad do it or whatever. They had a career day and they got to see it. And it literally, the anesthesiologist sat there and played on his phone the whole time. And he makes like $250,000 a year. And so I want to be able to sit on my phone and do nothing and make $250,000 a year. Like, I don't even have to talk to anybody. Like, well, I think you should probably do more research into what an anesthesiologist is responsible for. And I also said, like, you do realize that this is like a significant amount of schooling, like 7 years or whatever it is. You have to go through this significant amount of schooling, which is grueling. What is going to keep you going? Because, you're not going to make $250,000 the day you enter school. You're probably not going to make it the day you exit school. You're going to have all of this debt in between. What's going to make you keep going? What do you love about it? And the exact same thing as you experienced. Well, blank face. I just want to be on my phone and make a lot of money. I want to be really rich. And my other niece said the same thing. I want to be a YouTube influencer. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Why do you want to do that? Because I want to be really rich. Okay, great. Auntie's got a YouTube show. Okay, are you really rich? No, I'm not really rich because of my YouTube show. You must be doing it wrong, she says. Cool. Yeah. But we're missing that conversation with our young people about what they like, their heart is truly calling to.
Yeah.
Hopefully they find it, how many people go into college think they're going to study one thing and do that. Although we could say that's a little bit of the problems with losing liberal arts and right. These kids are deciding like what sport they're going to play at age 8 and what they're going to study in college at age 10.
Yeah.
And I just hope the anesthesiologist looks up every now and then from the phone.
Oh,
if I'm laying on the table.
Exactly right. I just had surgery after that conversation, like 2 weeks after. And the first person that I talked to, like waiting for surgery, was the anesthesiologist.
Tell him to put his phone away.
Yeah, no, he didn't have a phone at all. He was just asking me all the basic questions. So I was sure to go back to my niece and say, you do have to talk to people. That's the first person I talked to before surgery was the anesthesiologist. And she's like, no, you don't have to. I'm like, yeah, talk to him. I talked to my guy, like there's a little more involvement.
Well, it also struck me that anesthesiology is about numbing to prevent the pain.
Yeah.
How many addictions are about numbing the pain? This is somebody who's figured out, hey, there's a way to be addicted and be paid for it.
Yeah.
My first thought is they have good drugs. So, no matter how long I've been clean, my brain still goes there. You were talking about, the different ways to use kind of a what if. And one of the stories I love to tell in the book is about changing perspectives. And sometimes, right, it's the little small things that make the big difference in our life. And so my favorite story, which I always share, is that there's a woman who her husband always left cabinet doors open in the kitchen, and it drove her nuts. And it really upset her. And so it got to this point where she would think about, why doesn't he respect, me? He knows how much it bothers me. And then one day it's, well, what if every time I just close the door, I think about how something special about him. Right. And so it's just so simple. So what if I just change how I think about this moment and change that thought? And that for me is just such a great example of just a little thing in our life that asking, well, what if I do something different at this moment, how it can change. And it's one that I was like, oh, I'm using that one right away. Right. So not only do I use it in the book, but I use it every day in my own life.
Sure. Well, it also occurs to me that this is a law of attraction concept, but when you do make a change like that, not only are you changing your own thought process, which is huge because it's going to have ripple effects in your own life, but you also have ripple effects in other people's lives. That can actually lead to some kind of shift in behavior with him, the guy who's leaving the cabinets open, just because there's this new dynamic going on. And like, whoa, wait a minute. We may not understand what the dynamic is or why it's happening, but on some level we notice it, and it impacts our thinking.
Oh, absolutely. It's got to put that energy you put out there, right?
Yeah.
So instead of walking in the kitchen, and even if she doesn't say anything, right, it affects her energy, and that transposes over to him or even others around him.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite stories along that line is a guest who was on the program who she decided to make Post-it notes and leave Post-it notes for herself around the house to remind herself, be positive, good things are happening, all that kind of stuff. And it turned out that, and she was doing it, I guess, because she wanted to lose weight. She had like 30 pounds or something she wanted to take off, and did it successfully. Her husband did the same thing because he was reading the same notes. It was not her intention for him to read the same notes, but because he read the same notes, he got the same kind of results that she was getting. That's
awesome.
Yeah.
Now you got to share a shot.
Yeah.
It's not the same anymore.
So in some of the time we have left, give us a few more tidbits from the book. I mean, obviously you don't want to give away the store, but just give us one or two more things to kind of.
Actually, I do give away the store, and I'll talk about that at the end. But
fair enough.
It's 53 weeks of questions, and I do 53 weeks because I think you should always give people a little bit more than they expect. So they expect 52. So I do 53. But if I just I'll just open one up, and week 31. What if this week you did something you've been thinking about that brings you joy?
Ooh.
And interesting talking about doing what you love is, and actually the very first story is about Vera Wang, right? And who Vera Wang loved doing dresses on the side, but it wasn't what she did professionally.
Right.
And then she followed her dream and became very successful. Week 30, 23.
Preeminent clothing makers in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what if this week you caught yourself blaming and let it go? And the story I open with is that my wife asked me to make her some coffee, and something went wrong. And so, if she hadn't asked me to do that, it wouldn't have happened. And so, what I was able to just change is blame, is just so, it was just so in the way of the moment that we would be having that day. And fact is that I had to own it. I mean, I think taking ownership of things are so important. So again, there's 53 questions in there, and then there's a number of chapters in between the questions that just talk about different ways to, kind of about change and growth. Like this small chapter is called "It's Not a Straight Line," and just talking about that we don't just go like that in our change and growth. It's much sloppier.
It looks like a noodle of spaghetti rather than a straight line.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And that's why I think resetting each day. What's that?
If you watched The Good Place, have you guys ever watched that show?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like a Jeremy Bearimy, how they calculate time. It's like that.
Right. So true. So true. And and so, I think for me, that's why I think resetting each day is just so important. And one of the things I do a little bit different, and I share near the end of the book, is that I do something I call future journaling. Okay. And so each morning I don't journal about like what happened yesterday or what happened. I actually journal about the day coming up on who I want to be and the type of person.
Okay.
Right. So I talk about, I want to be a patient. I want to be a good husband. I don't want to be self-centered. I want to, and I write down these things of the type of person I want to be. And here's why it works is, so when I start to veer just a little bit from that, it's so prevalent and so current in my mind that I'm able to catch myself. And so that is something. So each day I start my day off with not about to-dos or email or whatever. It's just who I want to, the kind of person I want to show up today for my family, for my friends, and for just the world. And I have to do it every day because it's a new day. So
that's good. Well, I mean, what you're describing, I mentioned Abraham Hicks. They call that prepaving your day, laying out how you want your day to go. And you're doing it in terms of how you want to be that day.
Yes. Yeah. And then I go to kind of what are my priorities and what are kind of my to-dos.
Yeah. Good stuff. I like that.
Yeah, I love that.
So the name of the book is Start With What If. This book is out, right?
Yep. It's available Amazon, Barnes and Noble, bookshop.org. It's available around the world. And if they go to Buy What If, well, actually, I'll tell you, let me give you a different. So I know you've got it in the my website notes, but I actually give away 44 pages of the book. I give away the entire framework.
Okay.
Because I want people to have how to start with what if. So it's about like 12 chapters of the book. And so if you just go to startwithwhatif.com, and if you go there, you'll be able to just sign up and get it. You can read it in your Kindle, on your phone, and PDF, however you want. And so it's a free download. And then again, you can purchase the book.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Do you also like hearing from readers?
Yeah, I love to. Yeah. Yeah. And I hear from them. I hear from a lot. And
okay. What do they do? Do they contact you through the website? How does that work?
Yeah. It's interesting. I actually, one of the things is pre-launch, I put the book up on a thing called NetGalley, where a lot of librarians and the reviewers are there, and got a lot of great feedback on the librarians. And some have been really powerful, just, but again, the simplest ones, I'm a better wife, mother, and worker as a result of the book.
Oh, wow. That's really good.
What more, more could I ask for? Now, if I could just get in my daughters to read the book, I mean,
it'll come.
Ripple effects.
Although a couple of years ago, Business Insider did a story on me, and the headline was, "He woke up in the center seat of an airplane." Yeah. And I'm like, my daughters, I got 2 in the 20s and one who's 17. I'm like, oh, you must be so proud of Dad. Plastered across the internet.
Yeah, it's funny how those experiences just keep coming back, but they do. That's part of why they're learning experiences.
Hey, and they're part of our story, right?
Yeah.
I think, Jody Lynn, you just, you really moved me today because you really embraced your story. Right. And you get that.
Well, she's also, she's a money coach. So, she's used to telling that particular story in the way that ties into the money. That's why it flows so easily from her. Yeah.
And it's funny, right? Just how all those sort of things, people don't even equate them with how they deal with money.
It's true. Yeah.
It took me a long time to figure out how to deal with money.
Yeah.
Well, one of the other things I love about Jody Lynn is she's also really good at tying together how the conversation went. I'm going to ask her to do that again today, right here. Because, well, first of all, I know she's going to have a whole lot. Because I don't know if you know this, Jody Lynn, but you have like a barometer that I can just really easily read. The barometer is, there are times when you just jump right in and I say, okay, she's engaged. Like, he's going to have like 25 minutes that she's going to have to condense down to 3 in order to do it.
But she was so excited she got the dog. So
exactly.
When she wants to bring the dog in on it.
That's right.
Which was really cute.
Yeah, thank you. She's a pain in the butt sometimes, but okay. So I feel like we covered a lot of ground today, but there was a couple of things that tied together that really stood out for me, and that I think is such a beautiful reminder, Doug, for all the people that are listening, and for Walt and myself. We get so focused on, as a society, of like what the future is going to look like, and we have goals and we want to be here, and we're so adamant about looking to the future and how right now it's not happening or we're not living it, and it's so easy to get stuck in that. And I loved how simple you just put it, focusing on the day, what you can accomplish today, what impact you can make today. What if you just focus on today? And another thing that I want to tie to that is, you said often the smallest moments have the biggest impact. And that leads me back to, what if we just focused on this moment today? What would change? How would our lives be better? How could they be better? What if we just took that time to be in the moment today? So thank you, Doug, for that reminder. It's such a blessing.
Thank you. Boy, what a way to capture presence. Thank you.
You can see why I go to her at the end of every show, right?
Yeah.
This is like a win-win, no matter what.
My recap would be, I don't know, he blabbed a lot, but he made me laugh a couple times. So that's good.
That part was endearing as well. I mean, it works both ways.
Yeah.
But your point about presence. I think two words always come to my mind a lot, is presence and intention. Those two words are they're a little bit of North Stars for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. I like that.
So thank you for that recap.
You're welcome.
Well, there's actually one other thing that we like to do at the end of every show. I like to do, and consider this like your third North Star, if you will, because we've mentioned a couple of times we live in this wonderful 21st century age. We're having this conversation from vastly different distances, like we're in the same living room, and it's so cool that we can do that. One of the things that goes along with that is, I mean, you're an author. You've written at least 2 books. I mean, there may be more. I'm not sure. I know about 2, and that involves doing a lot of your own self-promotion and so forth. That's the way it works today. And so you're doing podcasts, and I'm sure you're doing other things too to help promote those books. And in the process, you're basically trying to help share your story because you want to impact other people's lives. That's what givers do. And the people who come onto this program, you're one of them. They're all givers. One thing about givers, though, in the 21st century is we don't get a lot of credit for the people that we help that we never know about.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that, and I noticed that, and I said, well, I'm a podcast host, so I can do something about that. So, Doug, on behalf of those people you've never met, never seen, never will meet, never will see, who you've been helping in ways you didn't even know about because you keep telling your story, you keep sharing your ideas over and over and over again, producing results that you never even know about, I think you should be thanked for that. So thank you for what you're doing, because you're making a difference in this world.
Oh, thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Believe me.
We're grateful that you shared it with us. So thank you for joining us. And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.